Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it, then let's evaluate together. The rain was coming down in sheets, hammering the windows of my Atlanta penthouse like it was trying to break through. I stood there, staring at the cold coffee mug on the counter, the one with the chipped handle Naomi always used, and her vinyl records, Miles Davis, Aretha Franklin, a scratched-up copy of What's Going On, were still stacked on the shelf, untouched since she'd last played them. The air smelled faintly of her lavender lotion, a ghost of her presence that clung to the room. My hands shook, not from the chill of the storm outside, but from the weight of a truth I couldn't outrun. Naomi was gone, and all the billions in my bank account couldn't bring her back. I'm James Carter, a name you might know from tech headlines or Forbes lists. I built an empire from nothing, a kid from the roughest corners of Detroit who turned a garage hustle into a software company that changed the game for small businesses. But this isn't a story about money. It's about the one person who showed me what success really means, and the devastating silence she left behind. This is the story of Naomi Brooks, the woman who rewrote my life, and the promise I made to keep her legacy alive. It was a Tuesday when the world stopped. Not with a stock market crash or a failed deal, but with a phone call from the hospital. The doctor's voice was steady, clinical. "Mr. Carter, I'm sorry. Naomi didn't make it through the night. I don't remember hanging up. I don't remember driving to the hospital. All I remember is standing in that sterile room, the beep of machines now silent, and Naomi lying there, her face peaceful, but so still it broke something inside me. Her hair, once a cascade of tight curls she'd tie back when she was deep in her legal work, was tucked under a hospital cap. Her hand, the one that used to grip mine during our late-night talks, was cold when I touched it. I whispered, "I'm not ready," but the universe didn't care. Naomi Brooks was a force, a black woman from Atlanta who fought for justice like it was her life's blood. She was a social justice lawyer, the kind who'd take on cases nobody else would touch, representing kids like Malik, a teenager from the West End who got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. She didn't just win cases, she changed lives, and she changed mine. I was a billionaire who thought success was about numbers, stock prices, net worth, quarterly earnings. Naomi showed me it was about people, about breaking down systems that crush dreams before they even start. I met her at a courthouse in Atlanta, a place I had no business being. I was there to scope out a potential investment in a legal tech startup, but I got distracted watching this woman in a navy blazer tear into a prosecutor like he was a first-year law student. Her voice was sharp, her arguments airtight, but it was her eyes that got me, deep brown, burning with a fire that said she wasn't just fighting for Malik, she was fighting for every kid like him. After the hearing, I found her in the hallway, scribbling notes on a legal pad, her hair tied back with a silk scarf. I introduced myself, expecting the usual fawning I got from people who knew my name. Instead, she looked me up and down, one eyebrow raised. "So you're the tech guy who thinks he can save the world with apps?" she said, her Atlanta drawl laced with skepticism. I grinned, unfazed. "James Carter, and I don't save the world, I just make it run smoother. Can I buy you a coffee?" She laughed, a sound like a summer breeze. "You think a billionaire can buy me with a latte, Mr. Carter?" "Nah," I shot back, leaning against the wall. "But I bet I can make you laugh." She rolled her eyes, but agreed to meet me at a little spot in Sweet Auburn, a historic black neighborhood where the air smelled of fried chicken and history. That coffee turned into 3 hours of talking, about her work, my company, and the worlds we came from. She told me about her grandmother, a civil rights activist who marched in Selma, and how that legacy pushed her to law school. I told her about my mom, Lillian, who worked 3 jobs to keep the lights on in our Detroit apartment. By the time we parted ways, I knew I'd met someone who didn't just see the suit or the bank account. She saw me. Now, standing in our No, my penthouse. I clutched her journal, the one she'd started writing in during those final months. It was leather-bound, worn at the edges from her constant scribbling. I opened it, my fingers trembling, and read a line in her neat, slanted handwriting. "Success isn't what you keep, James. It's what you leave behind." Those words hit me like a freight train. Naomi wasn't just my partner. She was my teacher, my challenge, my home. And she was gone, taken by cancer that didn't care about her fire or her fight. I sank to the floor, the journal pressed to my chest, and for the first time in years, I cried. Not the restrained tears of a CEO, but the raw, ugly sobs of a man who'd lost everything that mattered. Let me take you back to where it all started, because to understand what Naomi meant to me, you need to know who I was before her. I grew up in Detroit, in a neighborhood where gunshots were as common as church bells. Our apartment was a third-floor walk-up, the kind with peeling paint and a radiator that clanked like it was possessed. My mom, Lillian Carter, was the strongest person I knew. She worked as a cleaner, a cashier, and a part-time cook, coming home with hands rough from bleach and eyes that still held a flicker of hope. She'd sit me down at our wobbly kitchen table, her apron still on, and say, "James, you're gonna be somebody. Don't let this place tell you who you are." I was 12 when I started hustling, not with drugs or guns, but with brains. I'd collect old computers from thrift stores, fix them up, and sell them to neighbors. By 16, I had a little repair business in our garage, the air thick with the smell of solder and motor oil. I'd work late, the radio blasting Motown classics, The Temptations, Marvin Gaye, while I taught myself to code from library books. Every dollar I made was a promise. I'd get Mom out of that apartment, out of that life. I didn't dream of being a billionaire back then. I dreamed of being enough. School wasn't easy. I was the kid with hand-me-down clothes and a chip on my shoulder. Teachers didn't expect much from boys like me, but I had a knack for numbers and a hunger that wouldn't quit. I'd stay up late studying entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs and Jay-Z, trying to crack the code of their success. I wasn't chasing wealth for wealth's sake. I was chasing freedom, the kind Mom never had. By the time I was 18, I'd saved enough to move us to a better place, a small house with a yard, nothing fancy, but it was ours. Mom cried when we signed the papers, and I thought that was it, the peak of everything I'd worked for. I was wrong. The tech world didn't roll out the red carpet for a black kid from Detroit. Pitch meetings were battlegrounds. I'd walk into rooms full of white guys in Patagonia vests, their eyes sizing me up like I'd wandered into the wrong building. "Nice hustle, kid," one investor told me, smirking. "But this game's not for you." I didn't let it stop me. I refined my pitch, studied my competition, and turned every no into fuel. My big break came with a software platform I called Nexus, a tool that lets small businesses manage data without breaking the bank. It was simple, elegant, and disruptive, everything the big dogs weren't. When I finally landed a venture capital deal, I wasn't just a kid from Detroit anymore. I was James Carter, CEO, a name that opened doors. But success is a lonely road. The more zeros in my bank account, the harder it was to find people who saw past the headlines. I'd go to galas, shake hands, and smile for cameras, but it felt hollow. I'd built Nexus to create opportunities, not just for me, but for communities like mine, places where brilliance was trapped by zip codes. Still, I was chasing a version of success I didn't fully understand, until Naomi. That day in the courthouse, watching her fight for Malik, I saw something I couldn't name at the time: purpose. She wasn't just a lawyer. She was a warrior, wielding her law degree like a sword against a system that chewed up kids like Malik and spit them out. When we talked over coffee in Sweet Auburn, the air thick with the smell of cornbread and collards, she didn't hold back. "You talk a big game about opportunity, James," she said, stirring her coffee with a spoon. "But what are you doing for the kids who don't have a garage to hustle in?" I leaned back, caught off guard. I'm building tools to level the playing field. That's not enough. She shook her head, her scarf slipping slightly to reveal a curl of hair. Tools don't dismantle systems. People do. You've got power, James. What are you going to do with it? That question stuck with me, like a song you can't shake. Naomi wasn't impressed by my wealth or my title. She saw the kid who counted pennies with his mom, the one who knew what it meant to fight for every inch. She challenged me to be more, to see beyond my own ambition. And in that challenge, I found something I didn't know I was looking for. Love. Back in the penthouse, the rain hadn't let up. I flipped through Naomi's journal, each page a piece of her soul. She wrote about her cases, her dreams, and us, how we'd argue until dawn, how she loved the way I'd hum Motown tunes when I thought no one was listening. One entry stopped me cold. James thinks he's saving me with his money, but he's the one who needs saving. I hope he sees it before it's too late. I closed the journal, my throat tight. Naomi's death wasn't just a loss. It was a wake-up call. I'd spent years building an empire, but she showed me that true wealth isn't what you accumulate. It's what you give. Her fight, her love, her belief in a better world. They were my inheritance now. I made a promise right there on the floor of that empty penthouse to tell our story. Not for sympathy or headlines, but to honor her, to challenge anyone listening to rethink what success means. This is just the beginning. Naomi's life, our love, and the lessons she left behind, they're a story worth telling. And I'm going to tell it, not as a billionaire, but as a man who learned too late that love is the only currency that matters. If this story's hitting you, I'd love for you to join me on this journey. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Naomi and I have a lot more to share. Drop a comment below. What does success mean to you? Let's keep this conversation going. The Detroit summer was a beast. Humid air thick enough to choke on, the kind that made your shirt stick to your back before noon. I was 16, hunched over a busted Dell in our garage. The radio blasting ain't no mountain high enough. The place smelled like motor oil and dreams, with tools scattered across a workbench my mom, Lillian, had salvaged from a yard sale. I wasn't just fixing computers. I was building a way out. Every circuit I soldered, every hard drive I revived, was a step toward a promise. I'd make sure Mom never had to scrub another stranger's floor. That was the fire in my gut, the thing that kept me up past midnight, coding by the light of a flickering bulb. I'm James Carter, and this is where my story, the real one, started. Back in part 1, I told you about Naomi Brooks, the woman who turned my world upside down and left me picking up the pieces after cancer took her away. But to understand what she meant to me, you gotta see who I was before her, a kid from Detroit's East Side, where hope was a luxury and survival was a strategy. My neighborhood wasn't the kind you saw on postcards. It was corner stores with bulletproof glass, abandoned lots where kids played ball until sirens broke up the game. But it was home, alive with block parties where aunties danced to Motown and uncles grilled ribs like it was an art form. That's where I learned to hustle, not the kind that got you locked up, but the kind that got you free. Mom was my anchor. Lillian Carter was a force, a single mom who worked 3 jobs, cleaner, cashier, cook, to keep our lights on. She'd come home at dawn, her hands rough from bleach, her apron still tied, and sit me down at our wobbly kitchen table. "James," she'd say, her voice tired but fierce, "you're bigger than this place. Don't let nobody tell you different." She'd wanted to be a journalist once, before life and bills got in the way. Her dream was a ghost. But she poured it into me, clipping articles about black entrepreneurs and leaving them on my bed. I soaked it up, studying cats like Russell Simmons and Oprah, trying to crack the code of how they made it. My first hustle was computers. I'd scavenge old PCs from thrift stores, fix them up and sell them to neighbors for a few bucks. By 16, I had a little business going in our garage. Carter's Tech Fix, scrawled on a piece of cardboard. I'd work to the sound of Marvin Gaye or the Supremes, my hands stained with grease, dreaming of something bigger. But dreams don't pay the rent, and I learned that the hard way. At 18, I took a big swing with my first startup, a website to connect local businesses with customers. I poured everything into it, every penny I'd saved, every hour I had. I even found an investor, some slick-talking guy in a suit who promised to back me. He took my money, my code, and ghosted me. I was broke, humiliated, and back to square one. I'll never forget the night it all fell apart. I was in the garage, staring at a blank screen, the weight of failure crushing me. Mom came out, still in her diner uniform, and sat on an old milk crate. "You okay, baby?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I shook my head, my voice tight. "I blew it, Mom. Everything we worked for. It's gone." She reached for my hand, her grip strong. "Failure ain't the end, James. It's fuel. You get up, you learn, you keep going. That's who we are." Her words stuck with me, like a beat you can't shake. I got up. I studied harder, coded better, and swore I'd never let anyone play me again. By 22, I'd built Nexus, a software platform that let small businesses manage data without shelling out millions. It was clean, simple, and a direct shot at the big tech dogs who priced out the little guys. I pitched it everywhere: coffee shops, tech meetups, anywhere I could get a foot in the door. Most folks didn't take me seriously. I'd walk into rooms full of investors, all white, all skeptical, their eyes saying, "Who's this black kid from Detroit?" One guy, Elliot Vance, a smug CEO with a Harvard degree, laughed in my face. "Nice hustle, Carter," he said, smirking. "But this game's not for you." I didn't argue. I let my work talk. I refined Nexus, made it undeniable, and finally landed a venture capital deal in San Francisco. The room was quiet when I finished my pitch, my slides sharp, my numbers airtight. One investor, a woman named Carla, leaned forward. "You're not just selling software," she said. "You're selling a vision. I'm in." That deal changed everything. Nexus took off, and suddenly I wasn't just James from the block. I was James Carter, CEO, a name that opened doors and shut down doubters like Elliot Vance. But money doesn't fill the holes inside you. The higher I climbed, the lonelier it got. I'd go to these tech galas, all champagne and small talk, and feel like an outsider. People saw the suit, the watch, the car, but not the kid who'd counted pennies with his mom. I was building Nexus to create opportunities, not just for me, but for communities like mine. Places where brilliance got buried under systemic weight. Still, I was chasing a version of success I didn't fully understand, one tied to numbers and headlines. That's when Naomi Brooks walked into my life and flipped the script. I was in Atlanta, invited to speak at a community center in the West End, one of those places where hope and struggle lived side by side. I was there to talk about entrepreneurship, another checkbox in my corporate social responsibility playbook. The room was packed, kids, parents, local leaders, all eyes on me. I gave my usual spiel: work hard, think smart, seize opportunities. It was polished, practiced, and safe. Then a hand shot up from the front row. It was her, Naomi Brooks, in a blazer and jeans, her hair tied back with a silk scarf, her eyes locked on me like a laser. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice steady but sharp. "You talk about opportunities, but what are you doing to change the systems that keep kids like these from even getting a shot? Your apps don't fix redlining or mass incarceration." The room went quiet. I felt heat creep up my neck. I was used to softball questions, not surgical strikes. "I'm building tools to level the playing field," I said, keeping my cool. "Nexus helps small businesses compete. That's a start, right? She didn't blink. A start's not enough. You've got power, James. Use it. I don't know if it was her words or the way she said my name, but something shifted. After the talk, while folks were networking and grabbing cookies from a folding table, I found her by the exit, jotting notes on a legal pad. I walked up, hands in my pockets, trying to play it smooth. You always grill speakers like that, or am I special? She looked up, one eyebrow raised. You're not special yet, Mr. Carter, but you could be. She paused, then softened. I'm Naomi Brooks. You owe me a coffee for that question. I grinned. Deal. There's a spot in Sweet Auburn. Tomorrow, noon. She sized me up, like she was weighing my soul. Make it 1, and don't be late. The next day, I was at the cafe early, the air thick with the smell of cornbread and collards. The place was a slice of black Atlanta, walls covered with photos of civil rights leaders, a jukebox playing Sam Cooke. Naomi walked in, her scarf swapped for a pair of hoop earrings, her presence filling the room. We talked for hours, about her work defending kids like Malik, about my hustle in Detroit, about the worlds we came from. She told me about her grandmother, who'd marched in Selma, and how that fire ran through her veins. I told her about Mom, about the nights we'd eat cereal for dinner because it was all we had. It wasn't just talk, it was a connection, raw and real. At one point, she leaned forward, stirring her coffee, her eyes catching the light. You're not what I expected, James, she said. Most guys like you just write checks and call it a day. I leaned back, smirking. And most lawyers don't look like they could run a courtroom in a comedy club. You're full of surprises, Naomi Brooks. She laughed, a sound that hit me like a melody. Keep up, Carter. I don't slow down for anybody. And that coffee was the start of something I couldn't name yet, a spark that would grow into a fire. Naomi wasn't just a woman. She was a challenge, a mirror showing me who I could be. I left that cafe feeling alive in a way I hadn't in years, like I'd found a piece of myself I didn't know was missing. The Atlanta night was warm, the kind of sticky heat that made you crave a cold beer and a breeze. I was standing outside Naomi Brooks' apartment, a modest brick building in the West End, clutching a bottle of wine I'd spent way too long picking out at the store. My palms were sweaty, and not just from the humidity. This wasn't a boardroom or a pitch meeting. I was out of my element, waiting for the woman who'd already turned my world upside down. Naomi had agreed to a real date, not just coffee, and I was nervous as hell. Me, James Carter, the guy who'd stared down venture capitalists without blinking, was tripping over his own feet for a lawyer with a sharp tongue and a smile that could stop time. Last time I told you how I met Naomi, how she called me out at that community center and sparked something I couldn't shake. That coffee in Sweet Auburn was the start. But tonight, under the glow of a streetlight buzzing with moths, I was about to find out if this thing between us was real. Naomi wasn't just any woman. She was a black lawyer from Atlanta, rooted in a legacy of civil rights, fighting for kids like Malik, who got chewed up by the system. I was a tech billionaire from Detroit, built from hustle and hunger, but still figuring out what my wealth meant beyond the zeros. We were different, but when I was with her, those differences felt like pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. The door swung open, and there she was, Naomi, in a simple green dress that hugged her curves, her hair loose in a cascade of curls, hoop earrings catching the light. She smirked, leaning against the frame. You clean up nice, Carter. That wine better not be cheap. I grinned, holding up the bottle. Only the best for you, Brooks. You gonna let me in, or we drinking this on the stoop? She laughed, that summer breeze sound I was already hooked on, and stepped aside. Her apartment was small but alive, books stacked on every surface, a turntable spinning Nina Simone, and a faint smell of sage from a candle she'd just lit. The walls were covered with photos, her grandmother marching in Selma, her parents at a church picnic, Naomi graduating law school with a grin that said she'd conquered the world. It was a home, not just a place, and it made my penthouse feel like a museum by comparison. We talked over glasses of wine, the kind of conversation that flows like a river, easy, then deep, then easy again. She told me about her work, about Malik's case, and how she'd gotten him off a trumped-up charge. "The system's rigged, James," she said, her eyes fierce. "You don't fix that with apps or money. You fix it by showing up every damn day." I leaned forward, my elbows on her tiny kitchen table. "I hear you, but I'm trying. Nexus is about giving people a shot. Small businesses, folks who look like us. That's something, right?" She tilted her head, studying me. "It's a start. But you've got power, James. Real power. You gonna use it to change the game, or just play it?" Her words hit hard, like they always did. Naomi didn't let me coast. She pushed me to see beyond my own hustle. But before I could respond, she switched gears, her voice softening. "Tell me something real, not the Forbes version. Who's James Carter when nobody's watching?" I took a sip of wine, buying time. Nobody asked me that, not really. "I'm the kid who used to count pennies with my mom," I said finally. "The one who'd lie awake at night, hearing gunshots promising I'd get us out. Even now, with all this money, I'm still that kid, trying to prove I'm enough." She reached across the table, her hand brushing mine. "You're enough, James. You just gotta believe it. That touch, that moment. It was like a spark catching dry grass. We kept talking, laughing about her terrible cooking and my obsession with Motown. At some point, she put on At Last by Etta James, and I stood offering my hand. "Dance with me, Brooks." She raised an eyebrow. "You sure you can keep up?" "Try me," I shot back. We swayed in her living room, the music wrapping around us like a warm blanket. Her body was close, her breath against my cheek, and I felt the world shrink to just us. When the song ended, she looked up at me, her eyes soft but electric. I didn't think. I just leaned in, and our lips met. That kiss was everything. Fire, promise, a collision of two worlds. Her hand slid up my back, and mine found her waist, the heat of her skin through that green dress making my head spin. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a vow, unspoken, but real. But love, real love, doesn't come without a fight. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Dates at hole-in-the-wall jazz clubs, late-night talks on her couch, stolen moments that felt like stealing time itself. But trouble was brewing. Naomi wasn't sure about me. Not completely. She'd seen too many rich guys throw money at problems and call it change. One night, I offered to fund a new program at her community center, thinking it'd show her I was serious. We were at her office, surrounded by case files and empty coffee cups, when I laid it out. "Look, Naomi, I can bankroll this thing," I said, gesturing to her plans for a youth mentorship program. "New computers, staff, whatever you need. Let me help." She froze, her pen hovering over a notepad. "I don't need your money, James," she said, her voice low but sharp. "I need you to get it. This isn't about writing checks. It's about showing up, understanding the fight." I leaned back, stung. "I'm trying to show up. What's wrong with using what I've got to make a difference?" She stood, pacing. "What's wrong is I've seen guys like you before. You swoop in, play hero, then bounce when it gets messy. I'm not a project, James, and neither are these kids." Her words cut deep. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but part of me wondered if she was right. Was I just playing at change, using my wealth like a shield? I left her office that night, the air between us heavy, and spent the next few days replaying her words. I wasn't ready to lose her, so I did something I'd never done. I showed up, not as a CEO, but as a man willing to learn. I started volunteering at the community center, teaching coding to a group of teens who looked at me like I was an alien. My first class was a disaster. I tried to explain Python, but the projector crapped out, and I tripped over a cord, sending a kid's laptop crashing to the floor. The room erupted in laughter, and Naomi, who'd been watching from the back, doubled over. "T-billionaire can't even plug in a cord?" she called out, her grin wide. I shot her a mock glare, dusting off my jeans. "Keep laughing, Brooks. I'll have these kids coding apps by next month." She sauntered over, still chuckling. "You're a mess, Carter, but you showed up. That's a start." That moment broke the ice. Naomi started to trust me, bit by bit, and our relationship deepened. But the world wasn't as kind. Her best friend, Keisha Turner, a journalist with a nose for trouble, wasn't sold on me. We met at a barbecue joint, the air thick with the smell of ribs and hot sauce. Keisha leaned across the table, her braids swinging, and didn't mince words. "Look, James, you're smooth. I'll give you that. But Naomi's not some trophy for your ego. What's your angle?" I met her gaze, keeping my cool. "No angle, Keisha. I'm here for her, not the headlines." She snorted. "We'll see." Then came the media. A gossip blog dropped a story claiming I was dating Naomi to polish my image after a Nexus PR scandal. The headline was brutal. "Billionaire's charity romance, real love or PR stunt." Naomi saw it before I did, and when I showed up at her place, her face was stone. "Is this true?" she asked, holding up her phone. "Are you using me to look good?" I stepped closer, my voice steady. "Naomi, you know me. That's bullshit. I'm with you because you're you, not some press release." She looked away, her jaw tight. "I want to believe you, James, but I've been burned before." I took a risk, reaching for her hand. "Then let me prove it. Not with money, not with words, with time." She didn't pull away, but the doubt lingered. The world was watching. Her community, my board, the media, and every stare felt like a test. Even my mom, Lillian, had her worries. Over dinner at her place, surrounded by the smell of her famous cornbread, she gave me that look. "This Naomi, she's got you changing, James. Just don't forget where you came from." "I'm not forgetting, Mom," I said, cutting into a piece of chicken. "She's helping me remember." The pressure was real, but so was our love. One night, after a long day, we were on her couch, her head on my shoulder, John Coltrane playing softly. She looked up at me, her eyes soft. "You're still here?" she said, almost surprised. I brushed a curl from her face, my thumb grazing her cheek. "Nowhere else I'd rather be." She kissed me then, slow and deep, her hands pulling me closer. It was more than passion, it was trust, hard-won and fragile. Hard-won. I felt her heartbeat against mine, her warmth grounding me, and I knew this was worth fighting for. Naomi wasn't just my girl. She was my reason, my challenge, my home. But the fight was just beginning. The world wasn't done testing us, and neither was fate. The Atlanta skyline glittered through the hospital window, all sharp lights and promise. But inside room 312, the world felt like it was crumbling. Naomi Brooks lay in the bed, her once vibrant curls tucked under a soft scarf, her face pale, but her eyes still carrying that fire I fell in love with. The IV drip clicked rhythmically, a cruel metronome counting down time we didn't want to measure. I sat beside her, my hand wrapped around hers, feeling the fragility of her fingers against my calloused palm. The air smelled of antiseptic and fear, and all I could think was, this can't be real. I'm James Carter, the guy who built a tech empire from a Detroit garage, but no amount of money or hustle could fix this. Naomi, my reason, my home, was fighting for her life. Last time, I told you how our love caught fire. Those nights dancing to Etta James, the arguments that pushed me to be better, the kiss that felt like a vow. But love, real love, gets tested, and ours was about to face a storm we didn't see coming. Naomi wasn't just my girl. She was a black lawyer from Atlanta, a warrior for justice who'd taught me that power meant nothing if it didn't lift others. We'd been navigating doubts, her friend Keisha's skepticism, the media's gossip, my mom's worries, but we were building something solid. Then, like a crack in the pavement, everything shifted. It started small, subtle enough to ignore. Naomi was tired, more than usual, her fire dimming in ways I couldn't pin down. She'd brush it off, saying, "Just burning the candle at both ends, Carter," with that half smile that made my chest ache. But I noticed the changes. The way she'd pause to catch her breath after climbing stairs. The way her hands trembled when she tied her scarf. One night, we were at her place, sprawled on her couch with John Coltrane spinning, when she winced, pressing a hand to her chest. I sat up, my heart pounding. "You okay, Naomi?" She waved me off, but her voice was tight. "Just a twinge. Probably pulled something at the gym." I didn't buy it. "You've been off for weeks. Let's get you checked out. Please." She rolled her eyes, but there was a flicker of worry in them. "Fine, Mr. Overprotective. I'll make an appointment. Happy?" I wasn't, but I let it go. A week later, we were in a doctor's office, the kind of sterile place that makes your skin crawl. The doctor, a gray-haired woman with a gentle voice, delivered the news like a sledgehammer. Breast cancer, stage 3. Naomi sat stone still, her hands folded in her lap, while I felt the air sucked out of the room. I reached for her, but she pulled back, her jaw tight. "Don't," she whispered. "Not yet." That night, back at her apartment, we sat in silence, the weight of the diagnosis pressing down like humidity before a storm. The turntable was quiet, the sage candle unlit. I wanted to fix it, to throw every dollar I had at the problem. I started rambling. Top oncologists, private clinics, clinical trials. "I'll get you the best, Naomi. Whatever it takes." She cut me off, her voice sharp but brittle. "James, stop. I don't need you to save me. I need you to be here, not playing superhero with your checkbook." Her words stung, but they were true. I was falling back on what I knew, money, control, when what she needed was me, raw and real. I took her hand, softer this time. "I'm here, Naomi. I'm not going anywhere." She nodded, her eyes glistening but fierce. "Good. Because I'm not done fighting. Not this, not anything." That was Naomi, unbreakable, even when the world tried to break her. The next few months were a blur of chemo, hospital visits, and moments that cut deeper than any deal I'd ever closed. I'd drive her to treatments, the Atlanta traffic crawling as we listened to Aretha Franklin to keep the mood light. She'd joke about her new bold and beautiful look, tying her scarf with a flair that made nurses smile. But there were days when the fire dimmed, when she'd lean against me, exhausted, and I'd feel the weight of time slipping away. One afternoon, in the chemo ward, she caught me staring at her, my face probably screaming worry. She smirked, weak but wicked. "What, Carter? You falling for my hospital chic?" I laughed, despite the lump in my throat. "Always, Brooks. You're the flyest patient in here." She reached for my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "You're not bad yourself for a tech nerd." Those moments, small but heavy, became our lifeline. We'd lie together in her hospital bed, the TV muted, just holding each other. Her body was frailer, but her warmth, her heartbeat against mine, was a reminder of everything we were fighting for. One night, as rain tapped the window, she curled into me, her voice barely a whisper. "James, if I don't make it—" "Don't!" I cut in, my voice cracking. "You're gonna make it!" She squeezed my hand. "Listen, if I don't, promise me you'll keep going. Not just your company. The fight. For kids like Malik. For communities like ours." I swallowed hard, nodding. "I promise." That promise wasn't just words. It was a shift. Naomi had always pushed me to see beyond my empire, to use my power for something bigger. Inspired by her, I started redirecting Nexus's resources, funding a legal aid program for marginalized communities. I pitched it to my board, expecting pushback, and I got it. Elliot Vance, my old rival, was on the board now, his smirk as sharp as ever. We were in a sleek conference room, the Atlanta skyline sprawling behind us, when he leaned back in his chair. "Carter, this isn't a charity," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You're a CEO, not a social worker. Stick to profits." I met his gaze, unflinching. "Profits don't mean shit if they're built on broken systems. This is happening, Vance. Get on board or get out." The room went quiet, but I didn't care. Naomi's fight was my fight now, and I wasn't backing down, but the board wasn't my only battle. My mom, Lillian, was struggling with my choices. Over dinner at her place, the smell of her cornbread filling the air, she gave me that look, the one that said I was veering off course. "James, you're pouring everything into this girl," she said, slicing into a piece of ham. "Your company, your time, your heart. What happens if it all falls apart?" I set my fork down, my voice steady. "Mom, Naomi's not taking me away from who I am. She's showing me who I can be. You taught me to fight for what matters. This is it." She sighed, her eyes softening. "I just don't want you to lose yourself, baby." "I'm not losing," I said. "I'm finding." The hardest moments were with Naomi herself. She was fierce, but the cancer was relentless. One day I found her at her desk, struggling to tie her scarf, her hands shaking from the chemo. I knelt beside her, taking the silk gently. "Let me," I said. She looked away, her voice tight. "I hate this, James. Feeling weak." I tied the scarf, my fingers careful. "You're not weak. You're the strongest person I know." She met my eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. "You're stuck with me, you know that?" I grinned, brushing the tear away. "Good. I like being stuck." That night we cooked together, or tried to. I wanted to make her favorite gumbo, a recipe from her mom. The kitchen was a mess, spices everywhere, and I managed to burn the roux, filling the apartment with smoke. Naomi laughed until she coughed, waving a dish towel like a flag. "Carter, you're a billionaire and you can't cook gumbo? I'm calling the press." I pulled her close, her laughter vibrating against my chest. "Keep talking, Brooks. I'll master this yet." She looked up, her eyes bright despite the fatigue. "You already mastered what matters." Those moments, her laughter, her fight, were rewriting me. Naomi started a journal, not her usual legal notes, but something personal, pages filled with her thoughts, her dreams, our love. I'd catch her writing late at night, her pen moving like it was racing time. "What's that?" I asked once, leaning over her shoulder. She closed the journal, smiling. "Just making sure I leave something behind." I didn't push, but her words haunted me. She was preparing for a fight we might not win, and I wasn't ready to face that truth. Our love was growing stronger, but so was the shadow of her illness. The media was still sniffing around. Keisha was still skeptical, and my board was itching to pull the plug on my new initiatives. But none of that mattered as much as Naomi. The way she'd hum Aretha in the hospital, the way she'd challenge me to be better, the way her hand in mine felt like home. We were at a crossroads, and the road ahead was anything but clear. Naomi's fight was changing us, but it was also testing us in ways we couldn't imagine. The hospital room was too quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your chest until you can't breathe. The machines that had beeped for months were still, their screens dark. Naomi Brooks lay in the bed, her face peaceful, her hands folded like she was just resting. But she wasn't. The scarf she'd worn to cover her chemo-thinned hair had slipped, revealing the soft curve of her scalp. I stood frozen, my hand gripping hers, willing her to open her eyes, to flash that wicked grin and call me Carter one more time. But she didn't. Naomi, my fire, my home, was gone. I'm James Carter, a billionaire who thought he could outsmart anything, but cancer didn't care about my money or my hustle. It took her, and left me with nothing but a void that echoed her name. Last time I told you how Naomi's diagnosis shook us, how we fought through chemo and hospital stays, holding on to love like a lifeline. She was a black lawyer from Atlanta, a warrior for justice, and I was the tech CEO from Detroit trying to be the man she deserved. We faced doubts, her friend Keisha's skepticism, my mom's worries, my board's resistance. But we were building something unbreakable, or so I thought. Now, standing in that sterile room, the smell of antiseptic burning my nose, I realized love doesn't shield you from loss. It just makes it cut deeper. Her final moments are seared into me. It was late, the Atlanta skyline a blur of lights beyond the window. Naomi was weak, her voice a whisper, but her eyes still held that fire. She squeezed my hand, her grip frail but fierce. "James," she said, each word a struggle. "Keep going. The fight. For Malik. For all of them. Promise me." I leaned close, my forehead against hers, tears I couldn't stop falling. "I promise, Naomi. I swear." She smiled, faint but real. "Good. I love you, Carter." "I love you too," I choked out. "Always?" She closed her eyes, her breathing slowing, and then nothing. The nurse came in, her voice gentle but distant, saying things about time of death. I didn't hear her. I just held Naomi's hand, feeling the warmth fade, knowing the world had changed forever. I don't remember leaving the hospital, just the blur of rain on my windshield and the ache in my chest that wouldn't quit. The days after were a fog. I went back to my penthouse, the one Naomi had filled with laughter and Nina Simone. Her vinyls sat untouched, her chipped coffee mug still on the counter, her lavender lotion lingering in the air. I was a ghost, moving through meetings, signing papers, but not really there. My team noticed, whispers about James isn't himself, but they didn't get it. How could they? The woman who'd shown me what success meant was gone, and my billions felt like ash. The world didn't stop, though. My board at Nexus was circling, smelling weakness. Elliot Vance, that smug CEO who'd always had it out for me, saw his chance. We were in a boardroom, the kind with sleek tables and city views when he made his move. "Carter, your social justice projects are bleeding us dry," he said, his voice like oil. "Legal aid, community centers, this isn't a non-profit. Time to focus on profits." I stared at him, my hands clenched under the table. "Those projects are why we exist, Vance. They're not negotiable." He smirked, glancing at the other board members. "You're emotional, James. Understandable, given your loss. But business isn't personal." I stood, my voice low but sharp. "You're wrong. It's all personal. And if you can't see that, you don't belong here." The room went quiet, but the fight was on. Elliot was rallying the board, pushing to cut funding for the initiatives Naomi had inspired. I was ready to go to war. But the battle wasn't just external. Keisha Turner, Naomi's best friend, wasn't making it easy either. We met at a diner in the West End, the air thick with the smell of fried chicken and coffee. Keisha's braids were pulled back, her eyes hard as she leaned across the table. "You're turning Naomi into a cause," she said, her voice cutting. "A scholarship here, a center there." She was more than that, James. She deserved more. I gripped my coffee mug, fighting to keep my cool. I'm not trying to erase her, Keisha. I'm trying to honor her. She wanted this. Legal aid, opportunities for kids like Malik. Keisha shook her head. You think a check fixes grief? You're doing this to feel better, not because you get it. Her words hit like a punch. Was she right? Was I using Naomi's legacy to fill the hole she'd left? I didn't have an answer, and that scared me. Even my mom, Lillian, was worried. Over dinner at her place, the smell of her cornbread grounding me, she reached for my hand. James, you're carrying too much, she said. Naomi's gone, baby. You can't bring her back by burning yourself out. I'm not trying to bring her back, I said, my voice rough. I'm trying to keep her alive. Mom's eyes softened, but I saw the fear in them. Everyone was telling me to slow down, to grieve, but I couldn't. Naomi's promise was all I had left. Then came the moment that changed everything. I was back at the penthouse sorting through Naomi's things when I found her journal, leather-bound, worn from her constant writing. I'd seen her scribble in it during those hospital nights, but I'd never read it. Now, with the rain drumming outside, I opened it, my hands trembling. Her words were like a voice from beyond, raw and real. She wrote about her cases, her fears, our love. One entry stopped me cold. James thinks he's saving me with his money, but he's the one who needs saving. The world doesn't need more billionaires. It needs more fighters. I hope he sees it before it's too late. Another page, written just weeks before she died, broke me. I'm scared, but I'm not done. If I go, let my life mean something. Let it change things. For Malik, for the West End, for James. I sank to the floor, the journal pressed to my chest, tears streaming. Naomi hadn't just been fighting for herself. She'd been fighting for a world that didn't yet exist. Her words were a map, a call to action, and I knew what I had to do. I wasn't just going to fund programs. I was going to build a legacy, the kind she'd dreamed of. The next day, I called a meeting with my team, laying out plans for the Naomi Brooks Foundation. Scholarships for young lawyers, legal aid for marginalized communities, centers where kids like Malik could dream big. It wasn't charity, it was justice, the kind Naomi lived for. But the board wasn't having it. Elliot Vance led the charge, his voice smug over a video call. This foundation's a pipe dream, Carter. You're risking Nexus's future for a personal crusade. Step back, or we'll make you. I leaned into the camera, my voice ice. Try me, Vance. This isn't just about Naomi. It's about every kid who's been counted out. I'm not stepping back. The call ended, but the threat hung heavy. I was fighting on two fronts, grief inside, enemies outside, and the weight was crushing. Even Keisha wasn't convinced. I ran into her at the community center, where she was dropping off supplies. You're moving fast, James, she said, her tone softer but still sharp. This foundation, is it for her or for you? I met her eyes, the journal's words echoing in my head. It's for her, Keisha, but it's also for me. She showed me what matters. I'm not stopping. She studied me, then nodded, a flicker of respect in her gaze. All right, Carter, prove it. The hardest moments came unexpectedly. I'd hear Aretha Franklin on the radio and feel Naomi's absence like a knife. I'd walk past her favorite coffee shop in Sweet Auburn and see her ghost in the window, stirring a latte with that half smile. Grief wasn't a straight line. It was a maze, and I was lost in it. But Naomi's journal was my compass. I kept reading, page after page of her dreams, her love, her fight. One entry, written in a shaky hand, read, James is my heart, but the world is my fight. If I leave, let him carry it on. I closed the journal, my resolve hardening. Naomi's death wasn't the end. It was a beginning. I was done playing by the world's rules. I'd fight for her legacy, for the kids she'd fought for the man she'd believed I could be. But the board was closing in, and my grief was a shadow I couldn't outrun. The question wasn't just whether I could keep my promise. It was whether I could survive long enough to try. The Atlanta Community Center was buzzing, the kind of energy that hums in your bones. Kids laughed in the hallway, their sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. Elders swapped stories over coffee, their voices weaving a tapestry of resilience. I stood at the podium, the spotlight warm on my face, looking out at a crowd that felt like family. This was Naomi Brooks's world, her fight, her heart, and I was here to honor it. The Naomi Brooks Foundation was launching tonight, a living testament to the woman who'd changed me. I'm James Carter, a billionaire who once thought success was a balance sheet. Naomi taught me it's a legacy, and I was ready to live that truth. Last time I told you about the darkest moment, Naomi's death, the journal that broke me open, the fights with my board and myself. Her passing left a void, but her words lit a fire. I was a black kid from Detroit who'd built a tech empire, but Naomi, a lawyer from Atlanta's West End, showed me that power means nothing if it doesn't lift others. I'd promised her I'd keep fighting, for kids like Malik, for communities like ours, and now, standing here, I was keeping that promise. But getting here wasn't easy. The world doesn't hand you redemption. You have to claw for it. The weeks after Naomi's death were a battle. My board at Nexus, led by that snake Elliot Vance, was gunning for me. They wanted to gut the social initiatives I'd started, the legal aid, the community centers, calling them a distraction from profits. We were in a boardroom, the Atlanta skyline mocking me with its glitter, when Elliot laid it out. "Carter, you're tanking this company," he said, his smirk sharp as a blade. "Your girlfriend's gone. Time to let go of this crusade." I stood, my voice low but steel. Her name was Naomi Brooks, and she was worth more than your entire portfolio. These programs stay, or I walk, with my shares. The room froze. My shares were a big chunk of Nexus, and they knew it. Elliot's smirk faltered, but he wasn't done. "You're emotional, James. We'll vote you out if we have to." I leaned forward, locking eyes. "Try it. I built this company from nothing. I'll do it again if I have to." It was a bluff. I wasn't sure I had the stomach to start over, but it worked. The board backed down, grudgingly approving the Naomi Brooks Foundation. Scholarships for young lawyers, legal aid for the underserved, centers where kids could code, dream, and rise. It wasn't just a tribute to Naomi. It was a declaration that her fight, our fight, would live on. But the board wasn't my only hurdle. Keisha Turner, Naomi's best friend, was still watching me like a hawk. We met at the community center, sorting donations for a youth program. The air smelled of fresh paint and possibility, but Keisha's eyes were hard. "You're doing a lot, James," she said, stacking books. "But is this you, or is it guilt?" I paused, a box of laptops in my arms, Naomi's journal burning in my memory. "It's me, Keisha. She showed me what matters. Kids like Malik, places like this. I'm not perfect, but I'm all in." She studied me, her braids swinging as she tilted her head. "Naomi always said you had heart." I'm starting to believe her. That nod from Keisha was more than approval. It was a bridge. She started helping with the foundation, bringing her journalist's eye to our outreach, making sure Naomi's name meant something real. My mom, Lillian, came around too. Over dinner at her place, the smell of cornbread grounding me, she squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, baby," she said, her eyes shining. "Naomi would be too." Those words hit deep, but the real test came at the community center, months later. I was there to check on a coding class, the room buzzing with teens tapping away at laptops we'd donated. A kid approached me, his hoodie emblazoned with Morehouse. It was Malik, the teenager Naomi had saved from a bogus charge years ago. He was taller now, his eyes bright with purpose. "Mr. Carter," he said, grinning, "I'm studying law. Like Ms. Naomi, your foundation's paying for it. Thank you. I swallowed hard, Naomi's face flashing in my mind. Don't thank me, Malik. Thank her. She's the one who believed in you. He nodded, his voice soft. She believed in you too. That moment was everything. Malik wasn't just a kid. He was proof that Naomi's fight wasn't over. He was her legacy, and so was I. I started speaking at events, not as a CEO, but as a man transformed. Tonight, at the Foundation's launch, the room was packed. Community leaders, kids, even Keisha and Mom in the front row. I gripped the podium, the weight of Naomi's journal in my pocket, and let it all out. I used to think success was money, I said, my voice steady. Stock prices, headlines, a penthouse view. I was a kid from Detroit, hustling to prove I was enough. Then I met Naomi Brooks. I paused, the crowd quiet, their eyes locked on me. She was a lawyer, a fighter, a black woman who saw the world not as it is, but as it could be. She taught me that success isn't what you keep, it's what you give. This foundation, these scholarships, these centers, they're her dream, and they're my promise. The room erupted, applause rolling like thunder. I saw Malik clapping, Keisha nodding, Mom wiping her eyes. But it was more than cheers. It was connection, the kind Naomi lived for. I kept going, my voice rising. Look around you. Who needs you to show up? Who needs your voice, your fight? Success isn't a trophy. It's a responsibility. So I'm asking you, right here, right now, what will you do with yours? The crowd was on its feet, the energy electric. I stepped back, my heart full, feeling Naomi's presence like a warm breeze. Later, as folks mingled, I slipped outside, the Atlanta night wrapping around me. The air smelled of magnolias and memory, and I pulled out Naomi's journal, flipping to a page I'd read 100 times. James is my heart, but the world is my fight. Let him carry it on. I looked up at the stars, my voice a whisper. I'm trying, Naomi. I hope you're proud. Back at my penthouse, I put on At Last by Etta James, the song we danced to in her apartment. The vinyl crackled, and I closed my eyes, seeing her curls, her hoop earrings, her laugh. Naomi wasn't gone. She was everywhere. In Malik's dreams, in the kids coding at the center, in the lawyers we'd train. She'd changed me, not just as a man, but as a force for something bigger. I wrote her a letter that night, words I'd never send. You showed me what wealth really is. Love, impact, hope. I'm carrying your fight, and I'll never stop. I wasn't just a billionaire anymore. I was a student of Naomi's lessons, a messenger of her hope, a witness to the power of love that transcends loss. Success wasn't a destination. It was a journey, one I'd walk every day, for her, for us, for the world she believed in. So here's my challenge to you, wherever you are. Look at your life, your hustle, your dreams, your power. What are you chasing? Is it numbers, titles, likes? Or is it something deeper? Connection, impact, love. Naomi taught me that true wealth is what you give, not what you get. So take a step, right now. Lift someone up. Fight for something real. Love so fiercely it changes you. That's success. That's legacy. The spotlight's on you now. What will you do with it? This is the end of James and Naomi's story, but it's the start of yours. If this journey moved you, hit that subscribe button so we can keep sharing stories that matter. Drop a comment. How are you redefining success? Let's build something real together.